Hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome to the channel. Now this you might recognize is my $600 Supercharged Mercedes C-Class. We've done a fair amount to it to get it back on the road, and last week we got started on adding a backup camera. Now today I finally have the backup camera, which mounts to the license plate light cover. So let's get back there and finish up the install to have a backup camera that looks almost factory. Alright, so the camera came in, and it looks like it's going to fit really nicely. This essentially matches this, but with a camera on it. There's a little cutout for the cable to come in, but we'll have to make sure there's a place for it to run in the mount. In there. I guess we could decide, technically we could put it on this side, but I think we'll put it on this side so that the light for the plate light can shine out through here. So that means our next step is to remove this plastic trim panel so we can remove the housing for this right here. So this has to slide outwards, and right now with this panel in place it will not slide out. So let's get to it. The first step to remove the plate trim is to remove the 8mm retaining nut inside the trunk. It turns out the 8mm nut is captive, and the stud that holds it in place backed out enough for it to spin in place. So I used a trim tool to push back the panel while I finished unscrewing the nut. You could also hold the stud in place if you remove the license plate. So now to remove this panel, what we can do is use one of these. I'm going to go in, there's a 4 along the bottom, 4 pins, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what you could do is kind of get under here. In here you can see the pin there. So that one's already released, but what you can do is you put a little bit of pressure on this, and then in here you can get in with a tool and kind of push the little tabs. So what we're gonna do back here next is, you see this one here, we're gonna put pressure on the edge of the panel, and then in here get in and try to push in those tabs. Be careful if you use your bare hands, you don't want to get pinched, but that'll release it. I'm gonna take my trim tool, push up from the top gently here, kind of pry on it, but also here we go. Try something here. Use a 7mm socket. Yep, so the 7mm socket, you can kind of slide over the clip and release it. Where's the last one? Here we go. All right. So you see right here, we've got our clips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it turns out that the 7mm socket will fit over it enough to squeeze the prongs in, and that'll help you release it. So that's good to know. Now we can put this aside, put it in the trunk. So as you can see, I've already pulled out the connector for that side plate light housing. So inside there's one side is a tab, so it's on the inside on this case, and we want to release that. Push it in and then it pops out. All right, so you can see right here, what I had to do is push in here to release it, and then it's supposed to angle out, but a little bit of, when I pushed it, it just popped out because this side kind of catches on the edge of the opening and that slides up. Now what we're gonna do is assemble this. So see right there, that's gonna slide on here. But as you can see, there's no opening for that camera wire. So what I gotta do here is mark this so we can make an opening through here. And that way our wire will go inside the car and we'll be able to use it. Okay, this is wedged in now. I see it also holds the bulb. So first thing we're gonna do is I'm going to mark this and I'm going to cut a groove in there so this can fit. And then we have to see if this is flush with the trunk panel. We may have to cut a groove in there as well. So let's get to work. So right here I've marked where that opening has to be. But what we're gonna do is you could probably get in with a file. Let's see if I pull this out. If I use this file, it'll probably be just a little smaller. That's just the right size. We're gonna grind that off. Eye protection, ear protection. Just go slowly. Close, but not deep enough. So that's a good start. That's pretty close. Now I just have to see, will it actually clear, which I don't think so yet. So I gotta go in a little further. Okay, that clears in here. I don't think it'll clear into the trunk panel. Now since this here needs to actually be flush with this piece, so we're gonna grind down in here. Do that little by little. Now right here, I am getting a little close, a little thin on this. So what I'm actually gonna do is cut a small notch in here so that the wire can fit, and I'll round it off, and then I'll paint it because you don't want any rust to happen in here. So I'm gonna just file away a small notch in there, and we'll keep going. A little groove there. Let's see. I'm gonna file that up. It feels good. Okay. Let's put some paint on here. Get your touch-up stick. In my case, it's 040. You could use any generic black in there. It's not gonna be visible, but since I have it, just use some of this. There we go, and let it dry. All right, so now we have our groove in here and our groove in there. We can slide this in. So what we wanna do is feed this through the opening here. And then you want to make sure this side angles in. Okay, there we go. Down. That's snapped in there. That is here. All right. First, we want to be able to make sure this will actually slide out if I, yes, okay, and then let's slide back in if we put it back in place. So that means if we leave slack on the inside, we could pull this in and out as needed without leaving a loop. So that will look really clean here, very nice. I'll put the screws in later because I may have some LED bulbs to replace these incandescent bulbs, and we want to check that the camera works. So our next step is going to be to make the connections. So let's see, what do we have? So this is our little power harness for the camera. Got power and ground, and right here we have our video extension that goes to the head unit, so we can make this connection to get video. Now, if you remember, this brings 12 volt from the head unit when we put the car into reverse, so we're gonna connect that to this red wire here. So let me go get my tool, like my wire stripper and my crimpers, and we have to find a ground for this. So first thing we're gonna try is actually that nut that held that panel in here. All right, so we are stripping this here. Okay, that's in. I'm gonna strip this, find the ground. So what I'm doing here is kind of wedging the ground wire into the opening where that trim panel screws into, just to have a ground and test it. I'm getting a warning for my right license plate lamp. That's because I didn't plug the harness back in yet. It's working, okay. And it looks like, yep, it's oriented properly, awesome. But that means that ground works as well, awesome. So what I did with this wire is I just kind of wedged it in that opening, and it turns out that is a ground. So if that hadn't worked, I would have tapped into the ground on this harness, which would have been the brown wire. And you can tell because there's a brown wire on all of the harnesses, including the other light. But we won't need to do that. So I'm gonna plug in the plate light harness back in. And now we just have to tuck this away too. Our first step before we do any of that is going to be to put our panel back in here. This is a good time to wipe all this down if you need to. All right, let's get this panel back in. So what we have to do is make sure this threaded piece lines up with the hole. And we gotta slide that over the camera. In fact, probably have to wiggle this out so we can feed it through. There we go. Make it a little easier. Line up the pinholes. See what we can do here. Do I have to remove my license plate? Let's see. My suspicion is the stud for that bolt is loose in the plastic, so I can push it with the plate out of the way so that I can tighten the nut on the inside. Yep, that's what I thought. Okay. Right here is the little stud thing, and we want to make sure that centers on the nut so we can get it started. That's grabbed it. Now we can snap these in. That is in. Just have to hold that in place. I'm gonna use a flathead screwdriver to brace the squared section. It's a square, there's like a square opening there. And if I could stop this from turning, have it pull itself in there. And I can keep going until it's snug. Awesome. All right, I just have to figure out how to ground that into there. Like, since it's a captive nut, I can't actually thread that on. Unless I have a small nut for that. Let's see. Hey, perfect. So it turns out, very luckily, I have a M5 by 0.8 nut. So I'll be able to just use that here. Just kind of wedge and get that stuck in there if I can. There we go. Tighten that up. That should do it. Right here I put a second nut on there. Just lightly on, it's just to hold the ground. And what we're gonna do is just tape that ground wire out of the way so it doesn't like get pulled and stuff. There we go. Now if we can wrap this in some fabric tape, we could probably maybe up here. Let's do a little wrap in fabric tape. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna wrap this too in fabric tape. That should be okay here. We can test it again. We're gonna see if both of our lights work. They do, looks good, awesome. All right, so before we close this up, let's go over here. We've got our wiring coming up here, zip tied on there. This is zip tied up here and it's got fabric tape around it. I'll come and readjust this if I need to, but it should hold in place here. We've got our wire running in here into this, which is right back there. It comes out here. That should be enough slack, yeah. So if we need to pull this forward and back, it should still work just fine. So that's great. Now we just have to put our panel back in. So to do that, one tip I have is that you remember these clips here we used to run the wire up? If we undo that here, this will shift a bit. There's another one right here. We'll do the same thing. That'll let us pull this out of the way a bit, and that'll allow us to slide the panel in a little more easily. So our first step is going to be to kind of align it there, and then we'll start putting the pins back in. And we don't want to forget to plug this in, but first we'll start by aligning this in here. So it pulls back with that clip undone. Pop this. Make this connection right here. Connector only plugs in one way, and now we can move it back. And we're pretty much in place. It looks like all the wires in here are going to be out of the way, so that's great. We can pop these clips back in. This one is not in place. Yeah, there we go. This one will slide down because there's no cable inside. It can't slide out of place. Now we can start with the inner pins. We're gonna just put all those in place. So again, as a quick recap, that's along here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's just the base pins. We also have the plungers to put in. I mean, it may not be the technical term, but these will have to go in. I'm gonna double check before we do that the camera's working, just so if I need to get back in, you know, if for whatever reason something moved, I can still pull it all out pretty easily. All right, put these plungers back in. There we go, those are all in. Now we have this to put back on. So this will snap over here. If you remember, there's a little snap there on the handle part. So I think we have to angle it down. Yep. Looks good. This is the same as the trunk liner up top. Same type of pins. There we go. That's all buttoned up. Now we can close this up and go take a look. There we go. Well, it's working. And with that, all we need to do is button all this back up, put all the screws back in. But as you can hear, it's clicking here. That's something we have to check out. I think it's coming from this side, so we're gonna have to pull this back out and take a closer look. So you can see from here, you can barely see it. And it looks really clean from over here. Just tucked away here. You'll see it's there if you're looking for it, but it's pretty subtle, it's out of the way, it's secure, looks good. Nice. So that wraps up the backup camera install. It looks really clean and it makes this car even easier to park. If you want to get a backup camera like the one I used, I'll leave a link in the video description, but just keep in mind there are 4 different styles of plate light covers for this generation, so you'll want to get the one that matches your car. If you have any questions about the process, let me know down in the comments, and if this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like. Now, if you want to see more content on this car, subscribe, because we still have to figure out that clicking in the dash. In fact, let's get a scanner right now and see if we can't get a better idea of what's going on. So right here in the air conditioning module, we have a stored fault that is component M2/15, left and right footwell flaps actuator is stiff or blocked. So that tells me which actuator is having an issue on the HVAC system and is causing the clicking. So what it's trying to do is read the fully closed and open positions before it'll work properly. And since it's jammed or something's broken, it's having issues and it's sending back this code. So that's one step closer to what we need to do. So with this information, I can actually go do a little more research so I know what to expect and where to access that from out here. There's a chance it could be just from in the footwell, but there's also a chance I'll have to pull out a lot more, like take all this out and reach in and stuff like that. But we'll see. So stay tuned to find out how we can fix this. And on that note, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.